Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Jade Dynasty Season 3 based on novel. So let's start. Qingyun Hill, Tongqian Peak. The tea fragrance curled upwards, continuously from the spotlessly white teacup with greenish-black tip and green cover. The tea which had just been steeped was steaming with traces of white steam, dispersing into the room. This was the one of the secluded room in the rear rooms of the Crystal Hall. The current day most powerful and prestigious three masters were gathered in this room, calmly sipping tea and discussing. The Qingyun disciples who had served the tea had quietly retreated, leaving only Reverend Dao Xian, Pi Yuhong Master, and Yun Yilan, the three of them. Reverend Dao Xian was the first to speak, smiled and said, "This tea is a specialty from a place near Qingyun Hill. Although it is nothing rare, but it is also considered an fragrant quality produce. Both has tried it. What do you all think?" Yun Yilan put down his cup, nodded and said, "The fragrance remains in the throat, like flowing ceaselessly from the mouth into the stomach. It is indeed a good tea." Reverend Dao Xian laughed and said, "If Yun's senior brother likes it, in the future after this evil beast calamity is over, just bring some of it back to Fenxiong Valley." Yun Yilan smiled, nodded and said, "That will be the best, Reverend. You can't go back on your words when the time comes." The two of them smiled at each other. Pi Yuhong Master instead chanted beside them. Reverend Dao Xian looked over at him and said, "What is it, Master?" Pi Yuhong Master sighed and said, "Actually, I also know that when facing such calamity, we have to maintain a calm state of mind so that we can deal with it with composure. However, the Buddha is compassionate. Once I think of the common people right now are in such dire straits, I cannot help but feel anxious. I have forget myself, both please do not mind." Yun Yilan's face slightly changed. A glint also flashed past Reverend Dao Xian's eyes, but his face too turned solemn soon after. Looking at Pi Yuhong Master, Reverend Dao Xian slowly said, "Master is right. Since we claim ourselves to be the good faction, naturally we should take up the responsibility of the common people. Excuse me for my impropriety." Pi Yuhong Master placed his palms together and shook his head, quietly said, "You're too kind, Reverend. I did not mean to blame Reverend just now." Yun Yilan's face expression by now had returned to normal, smiled and said, all right. Look at both of your genteel behavior, isn't it more unbearable? We better not say any more superfluous words. Quickly get to the main topic." Reverend Dao Xian and Pi Yuhong Master laughed. Reverend Dao Xian nodded and said, "Yun's senior brother is right. In fact, I invited both here today for discussion, is for this evil beast calamity. There seems to be strange changes." Yun Yilan and Pi Yuhong Master were surprised. Yun Yilan said, "What changes, Reverend, please say." Reverend Dao Xian, looking solemn, said, "A few days ago I sent Xiao Yi Cai, Lin Jingyu and other capable disciples to investigate on the evil beast situation. In the end they only just came back yesterday night, but reported a very unusual thing." Master Pi Yuhong saw Reverend Dao Xian's solemn face with some puzzlement, could not help but ask, "What happened?" Reverend Dao Xian paused and said, "According to Yi Cai, those demon beasts that came from the south and attacked Central Plains, has always headed straight here, massacring along the way. But recently for some reasons, suddenly a large number of beasts stopped and started to head southwest, and the number of beasts that continue to move to our north direction, seems like there are only 40% of the original numbers." Yun Yilan pondered a moment, said, "The southwest direction, isn't there where the evil sect has always been running wild?" Reverend Dao Xian nodded and said, "That's right. Now that the evil sect is separated into three factions, Wandu clan, Ghost King sect and He Huan sect fighting interminably, even though we do not know where their headquarters are, but from the clues, the three headquarters are all at southwest, therefore that is where the evil sect's power has always concentrated in. And this time the evil beasts suddenly headed towards that direction in a large group. I wonder what had exactly happened." Pi Yuhong Master frowned, said, "Could it be that the demon beasts and the evil sect already have some conflicts, and has some losses, therefore they are heading there in forces to give support?" Reverend Dao Xian, his expression heavy, said, "It is not clear at the moment, but if it is so, it would be the best. Both the demon beasts and the evil sect are scourge. If they fight with each other, it is to the benefit of the common people." Yun Yilan suddenly shook his head, said, "Both sect heads, I think it is not as simple as it seemed. Reverend Dao Xian glanced at him and said, "Oh, Yun Valley Master, please enlighten." Yun Yilan said, "You and I are well aware that the people of evil sect have been selfish. To say that they are fighting with the demon beast for the sake of the common people, I think this is impossible." Seeing both Reverend Dao Xian and Pu Hong Master also nodding slightly, Yun Yilan smiled, then said, "On the contrary, from my understanding of the evil sect, now that they know the mighty force of the demon beast, not to mention being their foe, even if the demon beasts inadvertently hurt them, I'm afraid they would rather bear it quietly and retreat. Better to let us the good faction handle these savage demon beasts." Reverend Dao Xian nodded and said, "Yes, Yun Valley Master is right, but a large number of demon beasts did head to southwest. In Yun Valley Master's opinion, why is this so?" Yun Yilan was silent for a moment, in a deep voice said, "From the past behaviors of the demon beasts heading into the Central Plains, they do not have any specific objectives, and have only been killing along the road, all the way north. So this time they changed direction suddenly. There must be something odd. It must be one of the demon beasts near southwest suffered some big disadvantage, and that a Valdor called Beast Deity mobilize a large number of beasts to the southwest. But in the southwest, other than Central Plains evil sect, there are no other powerful figure, therefore I guessed, most probably within the evil sect, some unusual change has happened." Pu Hong Master's white brows frowned, said, "Unusual change, what does Valley Master means?" Yun Yilan laughed, said, "This is not something I can know." Pu Hong Master smiled, shook his head, "After speaking for half a day, Yun Patron, aren't you speaking in vain?" All of a sudden, all three of them laughed, but after a moment, Reverend Dao Xian, after contemplating, said, "Actually it seems to me that not all Yun's senior brother says doesn't matter. No matter what, now that a large number of demon beasts headed to the southwest, the pressure before us has also reduced much. At least we can save some time. Now that the world is looking towards us with hope, we have to take some action to let the world see." Yun Yilan glanced at Reverend Dao Xian, said, "Oh, is it that Reverend want us to take advantage of the weakened demon beast's force, and give a good fight?" Reverend Dao Xian with a grim expression said, "Yes, one less demon, the world will have less of a misery. Such responsibility is naturally our good faction." Pu Hong Master quietly chanted. A mocking expression quietly flashed past Yun Yilan's eyes, and then turned awe-inspiring, said, "Reverend is extremely right, and so we will follow Reverend's arrangement. My Fenxiong Valley is willing to be the vanguard." Reverend Dao Xian smiled and said, "With Yun Valley Master this sincerity, why should we worry the demon beasts being unbeaten? However, over at the southwest, I have pondered for a long time. I feel there is something mysterious about this, although we cannot rashly intervene, but if we ignore it, it seems inappropriate." Pu Hong Master nodded, said, "Yes, I am thinking the same thing. After all the demon beast's calamity has plunged the world into misery, what had exactly happened in the southwest? We should at least know what's going on." Yun Yilan said, "Since so, why don't we send some higher skilled disciples, secretly follow over to get some information?" Reverend Dao Xian nodded his head and said, "All right, let's decide it that way then." At this moment, Yun Yilan seemed to recall something, suddenly said to Reverend Dao Xian, "Oh right, there is one more thing, that still need to seek a favor from Reverend." Reverend Dao Xian said, "Yun Valley Master is too polite. What is it? You can speak your mind." Yun Yilan smiled and said, "I heard that your honorable sect Small Bamboo Valley disciple, Lu Shueqi, has been punished to face the wall and reflect on herself at Small Bamboo Valley full moon platform. After I knew about it, my heart really felt disturbed and—" He smiled and said, "That useless disciple of mine has been coming to see me every few days and pleading with me, said that he does not bear to see Miss Lu being punished because of our requests. Moreover, now that the demon beasts are causing misery to the world, it is a time where talented people are needed and Miss Lu is an outstanding disciple of Qingyun. Why don't Reverend on my behalf temporarily exempt Miss Lu from her punishment?" Reverend Dao Xian sighed and said, "It is all because of my lax discipline that this turns out into a joke in front of Yun Valley Master." Yun Yilan smiled and said, "Reverend, you are too polite. It is only my foolish disciple wishful delusion only, and the matters between the junior generations. It is better if we simply don't meddle, we have less things to worry." After speaking, he laughed out loud. Reverend Dao Xian contemplated for a moment, said, "Since Yun Valley Master personally pleaded for her, I definitely have to give this face. Why not like this? Today I will let Xueqi come back, at the same time pick a few disciples to go with her to Southwest to investigate, considered it as redeeming her mistakes. Yun Yilan's lips showed a hint of smile, said, "Ah. What a coincidence. I just wanted to say that I want to let my useless disciple, Li Zun, to go to Southwest to gain experience." Reverend Dao Xian looked at him, lightly said, "Then let them go together." Yun Yilan laughed loudly, cupped his hands together, said, "Then I first thank Reverend on behalf of my useless disciple." Reverend Dao Xian turned around, picked up the teacup from the table, slowly drank a mouthful, his eyes changed into an unpredictable look, slowly said, "Valley Master is too polite." Southwest Venomous Serpent Valley. This huge valley was surrounded by dense ancient forests. Most of the year, when it was dawn and evening, a miasma similar would emit from the forests. Those were actually the valley's numerous poisonous snakes' breaths. Nobody knew the reason for the abundant number of poisonous serpents in this valley. Their number had reached to a point where they were everywhere in the trees and on the ground. Only that Wan Du clan residents within the valley, because of the secret spell of Wan Du clan, forced these snakes to stay away. And these mountain full of snakes also turned into a natural barrier for Wan Du clan, and an inexhaustible treasure of poison. At the moment, it was one of the day's dawn. Above the dense forest of the valley, a faint colorful miasma could be seen rising indistinctly. It looked at the morning mist in the early morning, but if an ignorant person walked near it, a moment later his face 7 apertures would bleed and he would die from the toxic, finally buried with the snake's kiss. In the usual days, other than these snakes guarding the valley, Wan Du clan had always had disciples patrolling the place, guarding against intruders. However, for the past few days, for some reasons, there was no disciples. Seemed like the internal conflicts in Wan Du clan had already turned white hot. Pa, a gentle sound, a small stone rolled over, outside the valley from that only, at the same time already dilapidated, overgrown with weeds ancient path, jumped twice and rolled into the grasses beside and disappeared. And then, following a light footstep sounds, 3 tall, big but strange beasts appeared on the road. They were all savage wolf heads, but their bodies were of a panther, looking extremely strange. These 3 monsters looked to be careful, their noses constantly twitching, as if sniffing something in the air, slowly approaching the venomous serpent valley. And the valley was quiet, like completely caught off guard against the arrival of these 3 uninvited guests. Suddenly, one of the monsters' wolf head startled, like it had discovered something, and followed by a low roar. The other 2 monsters immediately stopped and looked towards the most sturdy tall monster standing in the middle. The wolf head monster's eyes flashed with menacing glare, its nose sniffing constantly, but it did not walk into the valley, instead slowly walked towards an area of dense patch of grasses beside the path, a faint smell of blood, slowly emanating from the grasses. The monster with a low roar, stepped into the grass, looking from the outside. The monster's body kept moving, as if rummaging in the grass to find something. After a while, a stir of movement from the grasses, that sturdy monster jumped out and back to the path, and in its mouth, it was biting a strange thing. It looked like a long whip, like some kind of monster's tail. The top of its fur had begun to rot, its color dull, the smell of blood constantly emanating. The other 2 monsters at the same time growled, apparently surprised and angry, their eyes flashing with menace. The monster placed the thing on the path, suddenly lifted its head up and gave a long howl, like a wolf's howl, sharp and mournful, straight up the sky. A moment later, that monster again held the thing in its mouth, disregarding the other 2, ran swiftly towards the back, leaving the valley. And the other 2 monsters, after roaring a few times, suddenly dashed into the valley. The ancient path was twisted and narrow, stretched ahead, brambles grown thickly on both sides of the forest, faint colorful miasma drifted among it. The beasts dashed straight ahead, looking at them, gashing their teeth. If there was someone in front of them right now, most likely they would be torn to pieces. The colorful miasma gently floated, slowly gathering in the forest. The 2 beasts roared again and again, not even a glance, and directly rushed into it. Initially nothing happened, but for some reasons, their roars gradually became softer, running slower and slower. In the next moment their bodies started to shake. Realizing something was wrong, the 2 beasts stopped and with difficulty turned their heads around, wanted to leave this forest, but before they could walk out a few steps, they collapsed, Blood flowed out of the 7 apertures on their faces, looked like they would not survive. In the middle of the forest, distantly, sigh, hair-raising sounds were heard approaching. Within a short while, numerous snake heads appeared from the branches of the trees, hissing sounds accompanied, big and small snakes slithered over. And while these snakes were happily vying for their food, suddenly, many stopped their actions, raised their heads in alert and then moved towards the entrance valley. On that desolate ancient path, a faint low drum sounds could be heard from afar. The entire earth slowly began to tremble. Strange sounds like thousands of troops moving came from the far distance. In the early morning of the valley, suddenly it plunged into a deadly silence. Letting out a long breath fiercely, the first disciple of God of Poison, Fan Xiong, fiercely swung his hand, throwing aside a Wan Du clan disciple's corpse, whose skull had been smashed by him. The body flew through the air, with a pong sound, slammed onto the offering table in the morning hall and dropped down. Like a devilish sneer in the world of spirits, or maybe it was intended to make an offering to the God of Poison, this evil sect clan leader, who killed people like flies, at the morning hall where the God of Poison coffin laid, right now had turned into a river of blood, thousands of disciples' corpses lying everywhere. The thick smell of human blood floated in the air. Right now, the 3 disciples of God of Poison, Fan Xiong, Cheng Wu Yue and Duan Yu San's men had already been fighting for several days. Other than a few higher skilled leaders leading, half of the ordinary disciples were dead or injured, and these days of fighting had already caused these 3 who vying for power, their eyes to turn red, almost turning berserk. And on the offering table in the morning hall, the box which contained the clan seal was still lying there quietly, coldly watching it all. Seemed like they were tired from killing. The battles inside and outside the hall gradually subsided, but the swords-drawn bow-bent tense atmosphere instead turned even more tense. Lao San, Duan Yu Shan, clustered around by 4 strange-looking elders, his eyes glaring, looking at Fan Xiong and Cheng Wu Yue in front of him, sneered, "I say 2 senior brothers, still refusing to stop. Now apart from those old men beside you, who else do you still have?" Fan Xiong and Cheng Wu Yue looked at each other. Both saw a trace of despair in each other's red eyes. Ever since from the night of the 7th day, the strange sounds from the morning hall, the 3 factions, who were already on standby immediately rushed into the morning hall in force, for fear that they might be one step too late and the official deal would be taken by someone else. And in that chaotic situation, countless people burst into the hall. Naturally each thought the other party had already premeditated to undermine their agreement and came to rob the seal. Within 2 or 3 words the fight had already started. And so far, the results of the 3 factions' battle finally started to become clear. Lao San Duan Yu Shan, who had always been the one with poorer skills, with the solid strength in his hands, slowly suppressed Fan Xiong and Cheng Wu Yue. Now, other than those standing behind them, Bai Duji, blood-sucking demon, Elder Duanmu etc. less than 10 people, they had no more chips in their hands. And Duan Yu Shan not only had Poison Clan 4 elders as bodyguards, in light and dark, he had at least 100 over men, among them many were elites. The solid power of Wan Du clan, 60% was actually all on Duan Yu Shan's hands, even more than what he had before the battle. It was really beyond their expectations. Watching helplessly as the situation had been decided, Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's eyes were full of reluctant, but in the end they had nothing to say. Looking at his 2 senior brothers' expressions, Duan Yu Shan could not help laughing out loud. Above him he always had 2 overbearing senior brothers and below, that Qin Wuyang whom his teacher God of Poison doted more than anything. Only he was ignored, for so many years. Finally he had his day. How could he not be ecstatic? Duan Yu Shan swagged with arrogance forward, the Poison Clan 4 protectors around him. Fan Xiong and Cheng Wu Yue watched him walk to the offering table, standing before the box, one clenching his fist, another gritting his teeth, obviously full of resentment. But to Duan Yu Shan, their anger at the moment undoubtedly were the victor's favorite. He even felt that with such a moment where he ruled over all of the people, he did not live in vain. Duan Yu Shan laughed, his attitude conceited, proudly reached out his hand and grabbed the green box in his hand. Fan Xiong and Cheng Wu Yue made low growls at the same time, stepped forward 1 step, but 4 elders immediately turned towards them. At the same time Duan Yu Shan's men with a hula sound rushed over, surrounded them. Both of their eyes looked like fire was about to spew out. Watch that box from a distance. Duan Yushan laughed even more conceitedly, proudly twisted open the lock, opened the box. Inside the box, golden silk lined the bottom, a dark brown small seal sat in the middle, a lifelike snake engraved on top of the seal. Although he did not flip it over, but everyone there including Duan Yushan knew, underneath the seal, 4 words were engraved. God of Poison Seal. Duan Yushan arrogantly looked around, pausing longer on Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's faces. Soaking in the delight of a victor, Duan Yushan smiled, although the smile looked weird and savage because of the blood on his face. He picked up the seal, turned it over. He wanted to take a good look at this symbol representing the highest power and authority of the Wan Du clan. At that moment, other than Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's angry pants, there was no sound in the hall, watching the birth of the new generation of Wan Du clan leader. Suddenly, when the crowd was holding their breaths, Duan Yushan uttered a piercing roar. The box and that important seal fell to the ground. Everyone was shocked, looked towards him and all gasped with astonishment. Duan Yushan, who was just being insufferably arrogant, right now his entire body was quivering, his face devoid of color, especially his 2 hands, in a blink turned into an extremely strange color of dark black. The next moment, a low insect wing flapping sound emitted from his hands. A strange flying insect flew up from his fingers. Not one present was not a veteran of Wan Du clan. The insect flew extremely fast, but almost all could see it clearly. Bai Duji was the first to exclaim, "Seven-tailed centipede! Seven-tailed centipede!" This cry, like a soul-stirring roar, shocked everyone. All of them looked at Duan Yushan. The shaking in his body had turned worse. An elder beside him intended to pull him, but his fingers had only slightly touched his clothes. Suddenly his body shook, with a scream flew back out. The next instant his right hand had turned black. Standing in the distance, blood-sucking demon's pupils contracted, roughly said, "Rotting flesh liverwort." The elder who was poisoned cried out in surprise. An elder next to him without hesitation, grasped beside him a broken leg of some chair, struck down his right hand, with his high skills, that chair leg, like a solid sword tip, chopped off that poisoned elder's right arm and then immediately threw that chair leg away. As if a second late, and his own hand would also suffer the same fate. The chair leg flew in the air, and everyone scrambled to avoid it. Right now Duan Yushan's face was full of black energy. Everyone clearly saw that the 2 hands, which had turned completely black, with a pop sound, the skin ruptured, even the blood that flowed out was already black. In the next moment, the hair-raising puff, puff, puff sounds unceasingly. Duan Yushan, who was poisoned with the most toxic venom in the world, his skin and flesh burst opened, black blood spewed out. He fell slumped to the ground. After struggling for a moment, never moved again. Fan Xiong stared blankly at this junior brother, who was just a moment ago extremely savage and right now dead, suddenly turned back and shouted, "Qin Wuyang, you this treacherous beast, get out." Everyone suddenly realized with a start, rotting flesh liverwort was highly toxic, one of the world's most hypertoxic thing, even in Wan Du clan. Only God of Poison himself could handle it. Fan Xiong, Cheng Wuye, Duan Yushan with their limited skills could not use this item. And the 7-tailed centipede was an absolutely rare poisonous thing and had always kept close to God of Poison. Now that the 2 most hypertoxic things appeared at the same time, and in the God of Poison seal small box, without asking, it must be Qin Wuyang, who had fooled everyone, secretly placed the poison. All of a sudden, people in the morning hall were on the alert, looked around them, fearing Qin Wuyang might suddenly appear beside them. Duan Yushan's death was too horrifying, not one was not terrified. At that moment, nobody dared to even breathe loudly. Only where Duan Yushan's corpse was, drops of black blood slowly fell. When it hit the ground, it made a slight hissing sound, burning a small dent. In a blink, around the body were small holes, showing that the toxicity of the poison. What is it? 2 senior brothers, various honored elders, we have only not met a few days. It is rare that everyone missed me so much. A calm voice, suddenly from outside the hall traveled in. Everyone was shocked and looked out. Qin Wuyang had changed, removed the hemp garment morning clothes, put on his usual clothes, smiling and unhurriedly walked in. And those sharp-eyed people had already saw, on his shoulder, a tiny strange insect was there. It was the 7-tailed centipede. Fan Xiong bitterly said, "You put the poison." Qin Wuyang at the moment ignored everyone, swaggered forward, came to Duan Yushan's corpse, in full view of everyone, stretched his hand and picked up that hypertoxic seal. Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's eyes shrank. Cheng Wuya sneered, said, "Good. Little junior brother, the three of us really have underestimated you." Qin Wuyang smiled and said, "Two senior brothers must be joking. Actually, with three senior brothers' strength, it is no effort at all to take junior brother's life. Junior brother also do not dare to resist." However, teacher had instructed before he left, said that the Ghost King sect, He Huan sect are like a tiger eyeing its prey. Three senior brothers are also not capable. Said I must take on the clan leader position, to prevent the 100 years of Wan do clan be destroyed in one day. Junior brother me have been brought up by teacher. I am in debt to teacher, and do not dare to disobey, therefore had to resort to tricks and made three senior brothers suffered. Fan Xiong angrily said, "Pay. So you assume that you have won. I tell you, the first person Lao Zi want to kill is you." After speaking, he turned to Cheng Wuya, "Lao, this fellow is too vicious. Let's join forces to kill him first, then we will share the world." Cheng Wuya immediately said, "Good, let's go." Among the clamor, both of them looked to about to charge, and behind them, Bai Duji, blood-sucking demon, also about to follow. Qin Wuyang indifferently said, "Elders, you have seen now, these senior brothers of mine really cannot hold their patience. All of you are coming over to kill me, not to mention just with seven-tailed centipede and rotting flesh liverwort. Whether can you all defeat me? Even if you all join forces to kill me, following these two useless things, do you all think your lives would be better in the future? Can you all win against Ghost King sect and He Huan sect? Can you all escape the besiegement of the good faction?" Bai Duzi and blood-sucking demon, Elder Duanmu paused stunned. That two hypertoxic poisons on Duan Yu Shan, only the person who received Wan Du clan poison sutra could use it, although they were in the clan for so many years, but they still could not reach that stage. In their hearts, in fact, they were already in fear of this young Qin Wuyang. Now that they heard his words, they hesitated and did not dare to go forward. And many following Duan Yu Shan, firstly would not follow Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuyang, and right now looked at each other, lost at what to do. Qin Wuyang looked at the crowd, smiled and said, "Everyone, I guarantee, as long as I take over the clan, I will definitely not bear grudges. How everyone was previously in the clan, I would definitely treat you the same." Under Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's glares, the people looked at each other for a long time, and then Bai Duji was the first to back away, followed by blood-sucking demon, Elder Duanmu, and the four elders etc. also started to walk to the side, leaving only Qin Wuyang, Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya, the three brothers, standing there. Fan Xiong's face revealed despair, knew the situation was hopeless. Cheng Wuya looked ashen. Qin Wuyang still maintained a faint smile, but in his heart he was still feeling indignation. Right now he was not angry at his two senior brother, but at Kang Song Taoist. He had already set his plan, and let the three brothers kill themselves, but not in such a large-scale fight. As long as his three senior brothers were removed, he would easily take over the clan position. Unexpectedly, with Kang Song Taoist's meddling, triggering a big battle with the three factions, destroying the clan's main strength. Qin Wuyang right now was angry, agonized and regretful, really wished to cut Kang Song Taoist into half. However, he could only think. Taoist Kang Song had disappeared. Qin Wuyang could only quietly bore it down. But in any case, Qin Wuyang had control of the situation. With a victory smile, he looked at the two brothers, leisurely said, "Two senior brothers, are you still not going to seek forgiveness before teacher's spirit tablet?" Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King sect headquarters location. Ji. Xiao Hui's familiar cries rang out in the dim and deep tunnel. From the shadows, Ghostly's figure emerged. On his shoulder, Xiao Hui drank a few mouthfuls from the big bag of wine it was holding and then cleverly tied up the bag's opening, letting it hang down. There was a long rope on the wine bag, just like a cover tied onto the monkey, not afraid of it slipping down. Ghostly's face was expressionless and walked ahead. The direction he was looking at was where Bai Yao's ice stone room was. Xiao Hui seemed a little drowsy, crouching on his shoulders, and yawned. The surroundings of the majestic Fox Mountain were desolate, and did not have much wild fruits. Most of the time it could only go to Ghost King sect wine cellar to steal some wine and drink. It had not been seen for a few days, and looked like it had gained some weight. Ghostly unhurriedly walked. On his way in he encountered only a few Ghost King sect ordinary disciples. He frowned slightly, These days many of the Ghost King sect disciples were being gathered and several days ago, led by Ghost King personally, left the mountain. As for where, he was unsure, and the strange thing was, this seemed like a very important matter. This vice leader did not know, and those that followed Ghost King for many years, Yuji, Mr. Ghost, including Taoist Kangsong, who had just joined Ghost King sect, as well as many of the elite Ghost King sect members that he knew, were all left at Majestic Fox Mountain. Ghost King mysteriously brought a number of many disciples, but their strength were actually not even half of Ghost King sect. Where exactly were they going? Ghost Lee felt bewildered. However, Mr. Ghost, Yuji etc. all remained silent. Ghost Lee naturally would not ask much, and utmost concern was not where Ghost King was going or how important this matter was. To him, Bai Yao was always the first. And now, he was also soon approaching that icy stone chamber. There was nobody at the door. Yuji was also not there. Usually that mysterious woman was most often seen at the cold stone chamber, but this period the mood in Ghost King sect was somehow not right. Her frequency also reduced. Ghost Lee stood at the door for a while, composed herself and then opened the door and walked in. After entering, he saw a white and slim figure standing next to Bai Yao. Ghost Lee was startled. At first thought it was Yuji, but after he got over his initial shock, Yuji had always dressed in black. This was not her. And as expected, when that lady heard the stone door moving and turned around, her face was not covered with veil. It was Xiao Bai. Ghost Lee was surprised. Ever since the great shaman's soul return law failed and he left Majestic Fox Mountain broken-hearted and once again returned, he had not seen Xiao Bai again. Although he could tell that Ghost King and Xiao Bai were old acquaintances, but he did not feel it was necessary to inquire. Xiao Bai saw Ghost Lee. Her expression also revealed a slight surprise and then a faint smile, said, "It is you." Ghost Lee, after all, knew Xiao Bai for some time and Xiao Bai had also advised him on saving Bai Yao's matter. His heart was still somewhat grateful, nodded his head, said, "Hello." At this time Xiao Hui, who was crouching on Ghost Lee's shoulders, also excitedly called out, "Gigi," twice to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai smiled to Xiao Hui and then looked at the Ghost Lee, said, "You are here to see Bai Yao." Ghost Lee slowly walked up. Bai Yao's beautiful and quiet face again appeared in front of him. His voice gradually turned deep and low, said, "Yes." Xiao Bai quietly watched this man sat down beside Bai Yao, then looked at the body lying on the cold stone platform, motionless. She gently sighed, shook her head and quietly retreated out. In the stone chamber, only Ghost Lee was left with Bai Yao. After an unknown amount of time passed, the heavy stone door again opened. Ghost Lee slowly came out from room, looked slightly haggard. He walked a few steps then suddenly stopped. In the tunnel not far from the stone chamber, the nine-tailed celestial fox, white figure was still patiently standing there. Xiao Bai saw his appearance, sighed and said, "You must be very upset at Bai Yao's state. It is really hard on you." Ghost Lee shook his head, said, "I'm fine." Xiao Bai walked to his side, patted his shoulder, whispered, "Don't be discouraged, there will always be hope." Ghost Lee's body shook, turned around to see her, his mouth slightly opened, but Xiao Bai saw his expression and spoke first, "Don't ask me, I also don't know what to do now." Ghost Lee's face in an instant fell, silently turned around, and was about to stride off when suddenly a "weng" sounded in his mind, felt the earth spinning, instantly a chill washed over his body, an icy cold energy suddenly leapt up from his energy channels. This shock was not something trivial. Right now the cold energy acting up in his body was the sinister orb evil energy, which he was extremely familiar with but in the past, especially after he had trained and improved greatly with the third volume of Qianshu True Wei. This ice-cold energy was gradually suppressed, and did not misbehave. For some reasons today it suddenly burst out. In no time, under Xiao Bai's astonished stare, Ghost Lee turned pale, looked as if he was enveloped in a layer of frost, and from his body, a strange black-green light emanated 3 kai out. In it mixed with a savage bloodthirsty smell. Xiao Bai's face turned pale, was about to reach out and help Ghost Lee, but her hand touched that black-green light. She immediately felt a wave of the sinister orb evil power charging at her. Xiao Bai frowned and took 3 steps back, which then managed to avoid this demon power. Xiao Hui, who was at Ghost Lee's shoulder, also felt something wrong, had long jumped off Ghost Lee's body and landed behind Xiao Bai, with its 3 eyes wide opened, staring at its owner. Ghost Lee's face showed that he was in pain. Suddenly his sleeve moved. a stream of cold air flashed past, the soul-devouring stick slipped out, but it did not land on the ground, floated before him and slowly rotated, as if using strange and cold eyes, watching this man who had possessed it for many years. The glimmering dark green light glowed continuously, the air filled with a strange atmosphere. Xiao Bai was pale, her brow wrinkled, but this evil power was emitted from his body. If she was to help Ghostly remove this sudden evil power, but the source was actually in Ghostly himself, how could she make the move? For a moment, Xiao Bai was at a loss. Ghostly's face was turning paler and paler, when it seemed that he almost could not breathe. Suddenly, a warm pure young red light shot burst from his chest, immediately reduced quite an amount of that cold evil power. Ghostly moved and struggled to sit down, the golden and dark green lights on his face at the same time flashed, with the two great good faction true ways urging, Inferno Mirror. Pure young fire increased in strength, and gradually suppressed this cold yin energy. However, when Ghostly had fully recovered, it was already an hour past. Right now Ghostly, his body drenched, when he opened his eyes, what he saw was Xiao Bai's concerned eyes. Ghostly gave a bitter laugh, but did not say anything, slowly stood up. Xiao Bai looked at him, quietly said, "Was it the sinister orb?" Ghostly picked up the soul-devouring stick, which had at some time fell on the ground, looked at it deeply and then once again, kept it in his sleeve. Xiao Bai's eyes twitched, suddenly stepped forward, said, "Don't think that if you keep quiet nobody will know, now that sinister orb savage evil power has already started to repel onto yourself. These 10 years the blood and energy channels in your body, because of the long-term contact with this savage thing has turned cold and poisoned with savageness. Now that you can luckily avoid it a death, it is because you are lucky to get one of the rare few magical weapons that can resist this savage object." But she looked slightly melancholy, even her voice turned sorrowful. "But how many times are you confident to escape? The next time, can you escape it?" Part 1 end here.